Another kind of greedy question, but I think all of you are going to be very interested in this as well, since we have kind of an authority figure here. Sites like SoundCloud and other ones where you can actually see the waveform of what you've uploaded. Since I do a lot of orchestral music, there'll be tiny pianissimos and giant fortissimos and crescendos. However, a lot of the music that's on there is really compressed and it almost looks like there's a brick of sound.
Yeah, sure.
What are your opinions about the use of compression in music today?
That's a tough one. It's been an ongoing debate for the past 15 years, let's say. Essentially, we refer to that as the loudness wars, where essentially everyone wants they know that they're going to be compared to something else, and psychologically we tend to find something that's louder better. In a surface sort of way. Most listeners, if you're given two things and one of them is slightly louder, most listeners will say that the louder one sounds better. And so that has led to the desire to get things louder and louder, and one of the ways you do that is through compression. You basically squash the top and bring the whole thing up so that the difference between the loudest passages and the softest passages is much less. Part of that comes from radio. Everything on radio is squashed, and so it's easy to bash compression. At the same time, I think again it goes back to what's appropriate. So, what is the musical intent? How are we going to engage the listener? And if compression or even over compression does that, then that's your answer. But what I would say is that it's overused more than it needs to be, and essentially what you do when you limit the dynamic range, when you squash something like that, you're taking away one of the tools that you have to grab your listener. I mean, obviously in classical music, as you know, one of the big sort of emotional instruments is the dynamic range, going from that pianissimo to the big thing is so dramatic, and it just engages you in a visceral way. And so when you squash something to the point of having no dynamics, you're basically removing one of the arrows out of your quiver that you have to make that connection. And now you need to find other ways to do that. So I don't think it's not a black and white answer, but I would say that compression is one of those things that is worth digging into and really listening to what is the result. Because it's tempting to just go, oh, compressor solves everything, and boom, we squash it, and oh yeah, that sounds better, and we're not really listening. And did we lose all the nuance of that lead vocal? All of a sudden, I'm disengaged. So some people would argue that, generally speaking, the disengagement that we've seen in popular music over the last 20 years, is at least partly tied to that. When you listen to older records that have more dynamic range, somehow they seem more emotionally compelling. Now, that's a broad, statement. don't hold me to that, but you get what I'm saying. There's definitely an arc to this, and so I would just hammer again the notion that it's really tool for the task. As long as you keep, in your sights that it's the goal is musical, no matter what tools you're using. The goal is musical. The goal is emotional, connecting with an audience. And that answers all of your questions. That answers, what we do.